Welcome back, guys. Today we are continuing our reading through the Bible plan. My name's Logan, and this year I'm reading through the Bible so that we can keep each other accountable and grow in Scripture through Christ. So without further ado, let's hop right into Genesis 38. In this chapter of Scripture, we get this really interesting story of Judah and Tamar. So Tamar was Judah's daughter-in-law. His first son had married her and he died. So the custom at that time was when your brother died, you would marry her wife so that she could have a kid through you. And then he died because he was doing things deceitful. So Judah's looking at this girl like, man, you're a widower. You're killing my boys. So he acts deceitfully and doesn't allow her to marry his third son. And years later, Judah actually sees her again, but he doesn't recognize her. She puts a veil over her face and she disguises herself in what looks like to be a prostitute. Judah was going to give her a goat later, but as collateral, he gave her his staff and his cloak. But what happens is later in the story, people find out she's a prostitute because she was pregnant out of wedlock, which was punishable in this time. And this is what Judah says in Genesis 39, "Bring her out and let her be burned," Judah demanded. But as they were taking her out to kill her, she sent this message to her father-in-law: "The man who owns these things made me pregnant. Look closely. Whose seal and cord and walking stick are these?" Judah recognized them immediately and said, "She is more righteous than I am because I didn't arrange for her to marry my son." And Judah never slept with Tamar again. Judah begins to take credit for his sin, in the sense of he's taking ownership of his faults. And this is a big deal because outside of Joseph, he's probably the only one of Jacob's sons that demonstrates that he's doing this. Now, the other sons could have done this, but in Scripture, he's it. And that becomes a really big deal because Judah is actually the Jewish people are named after his line. The kings come from Judah. So I want you, for the rest of the time that you read through Genesis, to be focusing on how does Judah act differently than his other brothers, and what is he willing to do that his other brothers are not. This is a part of Scripture that I skipped over for years, but whenever someone explained that to me, it really opened my eyes. Next, we go into Joseph, and Joseph, as you know, he was accused of rape today in this story. And that's a really big deal. Joseph was living a righteous life, a good life. He was a good man. God was with him, yet this woman acted evilly against him. It goes to show you that, and it's a scriptural theme that you'll see throughout the rest of the Bible that Jesus himself reinforces, is that how can you, who does not live of the world, be loved by the world? In other words, if you're trying to love God, the world will not love you. Jesus, the perfect man, was not loved by everyone in the world. So don't have this expectation that you will be too loved by the world. So Joseph is thrown in prison falsely, and it was that the Lord went with him. But Joseph, he lives in prison and he's working with God. And I think at this point, if I was Joseph, I would be thinking, man, I've been here for years. This isn't that bad. I'm ahead of everyone in prison. The Lord seems to be with me. I can do this. I'll be okay with this. But then there's this interesting opportunity that happens. Joseph meets two men that worked with Pharaoh, and they both have dreams. And he says this in Genesis 40, verse 8. "Interpreting dreams is God's business," Joseph replied. "Go ahead and tell me your dreams." Joseph is always taking ownership that he is working for the Lord, that he's in the business that God's in, and he wants to serve him no matter who comes into the picture. And it leaves us on this big thing where they interpret the dreams, and then we get this cliffhanger that's making us want to read into verse 41. And I hope you can join me back here tomorrow for verse 41, for chapter 41 and following as we continue our read through Genesis. May grace and peace be with you.